What's up, everyone? This is Dave, aka Finance Guy, and today we're not raiding. Today we're going to do a little video on the macros. I know I've been promising this for probably over a month at this point. It's June 1st as of the day of this recording, but it's probably July when this video actually gets posted. So we're actually going to deep dive into the macros a little bit. So if you've been wondering how I've been doing this local install of EverQuest, and I'm not going to walk through that. It's a little bit of a setup, but I will take you to the website real quick. So, Project EverQuest, projecteq.net. You can go to the forums and go to the general forum and find guide, setup guide, how to play. And there's a number of steps you can take to set up, to download the EverQuest Reign of Fear client, and this would be how to play on Project EQ. But you don't want to play on Project EQ. You want to play on a local install. But you do need to do some of these steps to get started. It comes with MacroQuest. It comes with E3. E3 tape. You can get the E3 guide right here, which is the macros that I use. There's MacroQuest 2 auto login, which shows you how to log in all your characters automatically, so you don't have to manually log everyone in because that would be a pain every day. So, and then you want to come over to here to docs.eqemu.io/server. And then right here on the left, Windows Server Installation. You can also see the link up here. This will walk you through how to install the server on your computer. And there is some technical stuff, but it mostly does it itself. Honestly, the first time I did struggle with it because I think I just didn't follow the directions, and that's okay. I'm terrible at following directions sometimes. You can also install a local login server like I did so that you're completely offline. And when you're completely offline, what's kind of great about that is you can play without internet. And if you're playing on a laptop, for example, you can play on the go. It's great. I recommend downloading Heidi SQL so that you can edit and see your database. This is good for like setting a GM account, for example, so you can see what I've done, zone instantly, warp instantly, summon characters, give items to people if you're trying to like skip long quests. So this is something to look at, and then you'll eventually get the Spire dashboard, which is the server itself, and you can actually, I'll show you real quick. You can actually back up your server every day if you want to. You can actually change the rules, and I will make a video about this at some point. You can change a lot of the rules of the game, so you can make it just like you want it. You can make experience faster or slower. You can make your hit points, mana, and endurance regenerate faster. You can spawn bots if you don't want to box. I mean, there's like, I'm just going to scroll super fast. Look at all the stuff you can do. I mean, there's tons and tons and tons that you get lost in this. You could really make a custom server and do whatever you want. But that's not really the point of this video. I just wanted to show it to you real fast. So we're going to jump into my macros. So we're going to come into Notepad++, and we're going to just start at, we'll come back to that, to start at Allie, and she's a warrior. And I'm not going to go through all 54 characters because a lot of the characters are the same. Like, obviously, like, all the wizards are pretty much the same. The mages are the same. But we'll just kind of touch base and talk about them as I go through the list. So these INI files are generated when you create the character and open their macro for the first time. So like, I didn't write all this. What I did write is on the right side of the equal sign. So like, life support equals distillate of divine healing 9, heal percent 30. And what that means is Allie's going to drink a healing potion at 30% health or less. And, obviously it's keep her alive, life support. Some of these other things were automatically populated, like her melee, and that she's going to be in the front. You could tell her to be behind, but Allie is a tank, so we want her in front of the mob. She's not going to taunt by default, but something called smart taunt, which means she's going to taunt if another tank loses aggro. And then just some other things you can do. She's going to kick whenever she has the ability to kick. She has no burns. You've probably seen me do quick burns. I don't use long burn or full burn yet, but you'll see some of these as I go through it. And she's not going to loot. You could actually tell more than one character to loot. You can tell one character to loot. You could just change it to that. Or in the game, you can actually, there's a command you can tell them that will make them loot. Here's a bard as an example. This is Allison. Real quick, all my characters drink healing potions. I just give them to them. You can buy them in Plane of Knowledge. I just, every so often give my characters 100 healing potions. Kind of the same thing with the meleeing. I don't think a bard has a melee ability. If it does, I haven't been using it. I don't have a lot of AAs on my bard, so they're not burning yet. Their default melody is Fire Cold Magic, which is down here. Now, I'm not the best bard. When I six box on live, my bard basically plays or sings the same bunch of songs over and over again. So there's a much better way to do this with the bards. I think I can only have 4 songs up at once, and these are the songs I use based on what I'm doing. So like the main melody. Actually, I think the main melody and Fire Cold Magic are the same melody in different order. So that's probably very inefficient. I probably could do a lot more of the melodies. Like I have no offensive bard melodies, and that's silly because bards can do some damage if you put them on offense. It's just I prefer to make them buff to group. That's just how I play. My Necromancer, so Angus is going to self-buff Ancient Master of Death. That's what self-buff means. It means it's a buff they're going to cast on themselves. We'll get to instant buff, bot buff, combat buff, and group buff. It's in the E3 documentation. I'll kind of go over it. I haven't really figured out how Cure and Cure All work. You can see pet spell, what the pet they're going to use, what buff they're going to put on their pet, some different parameters for their pet. We can see like what their main nuke is. So dots on assist means when you tell your characters to assist, they're going to instantly use those dots, no questions asked. Dots on command, you need to use the command /dots on. And I prefer to use my dots and debuffs on commands because some of the fights are so fast that I don't want them wasting their mana on dots and debuffs if the fight's going to be done in 10 seconds. It's just a waste of mana. So you can see the name of the dot, the gem it's going to use, spell gem, and you can leave this out. If the spell gem is left out, it will use it if it's memorized. If it's not memorized, it will automatically memorize it in gem 8. So that could be problematic if you have multiple spells in gem 8. They'll just keep sitting and standing and sitting and standing. They might get aggro and die. The command no aggro means do not cast this spell if you have aggro. And min mana means do not cast a spell if your mana is below. So we said min mana pipe character 30. Don't cast below 30%. Magic, main, poison, disease, fire. You can tell your characters to use a certain spell set using the command /NS. It's in the E3 documentation. So I usually use main. I don't know why magic is above main. Usually I have main at the top. And honestly, I feel like my spell sets don't always line up. So this might not work all the time. In fact, this is actually a mistake. This should say main. So I'm going to fix it right live for you. Because I bet you my Necros haven't been using this spell because it's magic and not main. So I'm just going to really quick, live on the video, go to Fernando, my other Necromancer. And yeah, same problem here. So we're just going to, I'm just going to change this to main. Yeah, it's a good thing I was recording this video. Okay, so that's basically the Necromancer. You can kind of see, the debuff Scent of Darkness to lower magic resistance. Fire, I think it's fire, poison, disease resistance. So that's good. You can tell the Necromancer to use their Witch spell. Oh, I did it wrong. I did that wrong too. So apparently, Ancient Master of Death is like Archwitch. So we actually want to put it down here because that way they will turn it off if they're about to die. Because, the Witch spells for Necromancers, if you've ever played a Necro, it can kill them. So it drains your health. So we're actually going to put this down here where a Witch spell is. So I actually, like I said, I don't play Necro very much, so I didn't know that until I just saw that while I was recording. We'll come to Anne, who's my first Druid. So she's going to cast Circle of Seasons on 3 of the groups and Regrowth of the Grove on the same 3 groups. My Druids, there's 9 groups, so each of the 3 Druids will cast on 3 different groups. Save some mana during buff time. These are automatically cast when you have bot buff. It will automatically check Gary, check Kevin, check Bria. If they don't have the buff, it will cast it on the group. The drawback is if someone else in the group loses the buff, like they die, they will not get rebuffed until you do a full rebuff. There's ways around that, which I'll show you in some of the macros. It just didn't make sense for these buffs. So in the healing routine, you can define tanks and other important characters. You can say what heal to use on tanks. The Druids don't heal tanks, so we'll get to that with the Clerics. You can define what heals to use with the important heal, and what heal to use for everyone. And then you can say who to heal. So you could say tanks, important bots, all pets, whatever. The Druids only do important bots and everyone else. I do not use the most powerful heal available to all the characters because it's a waste of mana when you have a ton of healers. I use, I think at level 60, I'm using like a level 40 heal just to save mana. Because otherwise everyone will heal at the same time. and overheal and waste a lot of mana. So there's no point if you have a heavy heal team to use the most powerful heal. At least at level 60, maybe at level 70 when it gets harder. I'm not really sure. Or level 65. So again, we have the nukes, we have the dots, we have the debuffs on command. Is this dots on assist? Oh, I gotta change that too. Look at this. I'm finding all these things that's wrong with my characters while I'm doing it. I'm not gonna do that like that. That's what we do. Do that. Just keep that there. We're gonna go here. So this is actually good. You know, you should review your macros periodically because you'll never know when you'll find stuff like that. And you can. I actually was just doing this earlier before I recorded this video. Do Anne, Becca, and Rose. Rose is my third druid. You'll find things that are wrong with your macros that make them inefficient and problematic. And it's good to just kind of maybe once if you're playing like every day like me or almost every day, it's good to just kind of maybe every week or two just kind of review your macros if you feel like something might be wrong with them. So I'm just really quickly live on cam or screen share doing some changes. I feel like there we go. Okay, so that was we'll go back to Anne, and then we're gonna go to Arthur. Arthur's my Shadow Knight. So Shadow Knights have more than one self buff, as you probably know if you played a Shadow Knight, but I only can have 15 buffs up at once, and I just had to prioritize that a couple of his buffs were just not useful compared to the other buffs on him. And then, you know, it kind of works the same way. Not much different than the other characters, similar to the Necromancer and the Warrior combined. Beast Warrior, kind of the same idea, casting Spiritual Purity on each of the groups. And then their pet spells, their pet buffs, direct damage and dots, very much the same. They have a kick. The monk, a little different. We're gonna use our Disciple Aura, our Celestial Fish Epic. We're gonna mend at 60% health or less, and we're gonna feign death at 90% aggro or less, so that we don't get aggro. And then we're gonna just spam our attacks. Monks have Quick Burn. I actually put 2 disciplines on Quick Burn. This is probably not smart because you're not going to know which one they're going to use, and you'll have to Quick Burn twice in the fight so that you use both. So I actually, if I wanted to, and I'm not going to, but if I wanted to, I could put this down here under a Long Burn and then have a Quick Burn and a Long Burn. I want to get to a higher level where there's a lot more to do with a burn, maybe with like AAs or just more abilities. Shaman's a little bit intense, a lot of buffs for resists and focus. And then what I do here, I was telling you how if a buff drops off a party member, they don't get the AoE buff, the group buff. This fixes it. So Anne's group consists of Darren, Tammy, Sid, Becca, and Liz. And if any of the others die besides Anne, Carly will automatically cast Focus of Spirit on them. And she's going to check for Cura's Focusing. So if Cura's Focusing is on that character already, she's not going to cast Focus of Spirit. That's what check for means. Check for means check for something else. If that other thing is present, don't do this. So it's good for debuffs that don't stack or buffs that don't stack. She's going to do Spirit of Jaguar on all the melee in her group. These actually don't work. The curing, well, these two don't work. I'm pretty sure these two do work, but this one, these don't work. I've not figured out how to do it. I just haven't read the manual. Again, kind of the same thing down here. Nothing too special. Just, you know, the dots, the debuffs, the slow. I have 2 of my Shaman using Turgor's Insects for magic-based slow, which is the better slow. And I have 2 of my Shaman using Plague of Insects, which is the disease-based slow, because you have plenty of mobs that are immune to magic, and you do need to get them slowed. So the Plague of Insects always checks for Turgor, so they don't try to cast over Turgors. Charlotte is a rogue, and pretty simple, basically just backstabbing and disciplines. The poisons don't work because I don't have the poisons, but if I did, they would automatically apply. And she has a Reaper's Ring from, I think, Arianar or whoever dropped that. Chris is a bard. We've seen bards. Cleric, so I actually wasn't using the spell until recently. This is basically your self-armor buff that gives mana regen. I kind of forgot all about it, so I just added it, and thank God. It doesn't stack with focus, so I had to block focus on all my clerics, so you do have to pay attention to like what spells are blocked by what, and going into your INI files or going into the client and just blocking the buffs. Again, with the kind of casting Ageism, and if it falls off of anyone, then to just recast it on them. We have all of our tanks, and we also I don't know why I prioritize my rangers as tanks too. They're not tanks, but they are getting healed as if they are, and then they have some other bots for the clerics heal, and you can see we're using Healing Light, which I think is like a level 39 spell. So it's just, like I said, waste of mana to use a powerful heal. Colleen also uses Mark of Karn and Mark of Retribution, which I hadn't been using up until this point in all the videos previously, but Mark of Karn, as you might know, when you put it on a mob and a melee hits the mob, the melee is healed slightly, and Mark of Retribution is like a reverse damage shield. When the mob strikes somebody, they take extra damage. The mob will take damage for doing a strike. You can, so that's kind of a cleric. It's another rogue, a bard. That's Dave. Dave doesn't really have any special abilities or anything put in besides kick, because I drive with him, so I don't want his macro to be too complicated. He does drink the potion though, which is very helpful. So I'm not going to think to do it. The wizards. So very important. The wizards with concussion. You want concussion to be the first on each line, or they might not use it. I had a problem with them where they weren't using concussion. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I do know that they were having a problem with concussion. But this is to prevent them from getting aggro. They will by default use concussion if they have too much aggro. And then obviously Sunstrike for fire, Drought of Ice for cold, and I don't even know how to pronounce this one. Elnerix, electrical rending for magic. He also uses. Dennis happens to have a robe of icicles, which has a clicky nuke. So if he's running below 15% mana, he'll stop nuking and he'll start using his clicky. So he can basically continue nuking regardless of his mana, which is great. And then if you want an AoE, there's AoE spells here. There's actually a slash command, /PBAE on, one word, which will turn on AoEs for all your enchanters, wizards, clerics, mages, and whoever else has AoEs. You do have to configure it kind of like this. Let's see. Here's the enchanters. They all look the same, and they all die, and I'll show you why they die. I actually have figured it out, and I just haven't really fixed it. Tash is a very high aggro spell, and where's the other one? Glamour of Kintaz, the Mez, is a very high aggro spell, and I always forget to turn my Mezes off. They Mez by default, and I really should just, do that. And I'm just afraid if I do, then I'll forget to turn it back on. So I'm going to do it right now while we're talking. So from now on, you're not going to see videos of me losing all my enchanters to Mez, because that's what happens, and it's super annoying. And I'll get right back to the enchanter in a second if there's something else very important you'll want to see. So who are we on? We're on Dustin. So another thing is they can do their stuns if you want to like do an AoE group, whether with your whole raid or a single group or however you want to do it. So you can do your triple stuns, and then you can actually auto rune. So like Veneral Sather and Trakenon have like a nasty life tap. You can auto rune your main tank, and when you do that, it will basically block the life tap. And any other mob that has a life tap or any kind of ability where you just need to block a ton of damage, any other mob where you can keep up with it, you can do auto rune. I think it's /rune on. I could be wrong. Rune on, rune off. Don't quote me on that. It's in the E3 documentation. They also have proc buff class and proc buff. I think that's like that recursion spell. I forget what it's called, but enchanters eventually get a buff that you cast on wizards and mages that will make them, when they cast a nuke, it'll do a bonus damage, and you can actually program that here. I think we did a beast sword. Yeah, cleric we did. So I think that's every class. Oh, here's a berserker. So not much to see to the berserker. I don't know how to play a berserker, so this might be bear. There might be more to it. I don't even know what a berserker axe ability is, so I'm probably not doing that right at all. In fact, for the first several levels of berserkering, or many levels, I wasn't even using frenzy. I had no idea how to play berserker. So, we have a ranger here. So we have the ranger is buffing some of the melee. He's buffing the tank groups. The other ranger is buffing the melee groups with Call the Predator. We use Jolt if we get too much aggro. Kind of similar to wizards in that regard. I don't think I'm using all the dots a ranger gets, and I don't know if I'm using the debuffs. Again, don't know rangers too well. Here's a mage. Again, pet. I should be using the mage epic pet, but for some reason it's not working. It said my thing ran out of charges, and I don't know how the mage epic works. I don't know if that's a bug on my server. If anyone knows how to use the mage epic, please tell me, because I don't feel like respawning it every single time it runs out of charges. It's not supposed to run out of charges. Maybe I deleted the initial item that it turns into the pet. Maybe I screwed up. I guess I could just summon it again. But, kind of the same thing here. kind of same thing, nothing special. The cat does summon Dagger of Symbols, which she will give to all the other pets out there. If you put this line twice, she will summon 2 for each pet, so they can dual wield. But for some reason, I had a problem with some pets not accepting 2 weapons, and then she would be like chain summoning weapons and trying to give it to them, and it wouldn't work. And then, yeah, so I just do 1 weapon. I don't know if that's gonna screw up their DPS. I'm not really sure. I think that's everyone. Here's the paladin. So kind of what you would think of that paladin, some buffs. She stuns. She chain stuns, which actually causes her to steal aggro a lot and die. But I don't have lay on hands in here. I actually don't have harm touch on either. I usually do it manually. So like I'll switch to the client and harm touch. Lay on hands, I'm not using it. I have to figure out the best use of it. Probably like when the tank gets down to like 20% health or something. That's completely my bad. One of my first serious characters in EverQuest was a paladin, so I really should be making a better paladin macro. And I think that's everyone. We're gonna quickly get to the complete heal macro. So I'm not gonna explain this to you like your programmers. You can actually just rip this macro off. I don't think it comes with E3. I think someone I knew wrote this macro based on the one that comes with the E3 macro. I might have to post this somewhere. Show if you ask me on like the Facebook group, I can send it to you. The EverQuest Facebook group, you can ask me for it. But basically, it defines the 6 clerics. It defines the 4 tanks. It just figures out the tanks are dead. It declares some other macros. It tells who are the names of the 6 clerics and what order do they go in, and then the tanks in what order. And then it kind of starts the default timing of 3, and then it says something in raid chat to kind of tell you who's who. And then it starts the macro. And what this does, and I'm not going to read this and figure this out, but complete heal has to cast out of the first spell gem, so that's important. And it's going to target the current tank, which will be Dave on the first tank, and it's going to tell you that it's healing the first tank. And then it's going to pause the timing of the complete heal chain, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seconds, whatever you set it to. And it's got to be a whole number. I've tried doing decimals at like 2.5, 3.5, and it glitches out a lot. I don't think it's meant to be a non-integer. And if someone dies, it's actually going to switch to the next tank. However, if you run this macro on the main tank, Mac complete heal, like on Dave example, if Dave dies, you need to immediately bring him back to the zone or it won't switch tanks. So I don't recommend running this on the main tank. I recommend running it on any other arbitrary character. It doesn't matter who it is, but they will stop using their E3 commands. It's got to be an unimportant character. Or you can run it on the main tank and just GM summon or res them the second they die, and then the clerics will take over and be fine after that. And they'll cycle through all the tanks. Mid-fight, you can actually say, set timing in raid chat, so he tells your raid, set timing and a number. And that number will change the timing of the complete heal chain in real time. You can also say start heal chain to start the heal chain and stop heal chain to stop it. I've also added to restart everyone's macro, all the clerics and Dave's macro, when I stop the heal chain, because you have to turn the clerics macros off to do this, or they might go off and do something else. You can also set the tanks in real time. If the tanks change, you can type set tanks in raid chat with 4 tanks. It has to be 4 by this macro, and you can always update it. So that's kind of the macros. I'm trying to think if there's like any other things I want to show you. Macro wise, I guess there's loot settings. So this is loot settings file. You can tell your auto looter to keep things and then to auto sell them. There's a command / auto sell. So a lot of stuff my looter is skipping, and certain things she's only keeping 20 of, for example, and then it's leaving the rest. This file basically populates itself. You don't type all this in. There's a way to synchronize your looter's inventory with this file, or as she loots, he or she adds it to this file. So this is huge. I've looted so much stuff. That was just a page. It's like 2,754 items that this character is, well, minus some line breaks. So 2,750 something items that she's looted. So that's the loot settings file. There's some other stuff in there. Oh, I have one that you should see. Okay, one last file. This is the start script, and this is gonna be hard to read, so I'm gonna zoom in a second. This is what starts the game for all my 54 characters, and you also need to use the MacroQuest auto login plugin to type in the password automatically. I'm not going to show you that because it has my passwords in it. And obviously, it is a local server, but I don't want security reasons. You're not going to see that. But basically, you start MacroQuest wherever it is on your computer. You then start EQ box chat wherever it is on your computer. Then you do task. This is the command you're going to type. It's task list. I don't know what this means. I got this script from someone else. So task list /NH//FI quote window title space EQ space the name of your character end quote the pipe character find /I and then you're gonna find EQ game.exe and then whatever this says null and then you're gonna do this stuff character name again this thing the path of EverQuest and then the executable path patch me so that you don't open the launcher and then the name of the username that you're going to use. And you're going to time out 5 seconds. The reason you want to time out 5 seconds is if you do this too fast, if you do a quick timeout like 2 seconds, 3 seconds, when you load the clients too fast, it's actually going to lock up your configuration file, which is going to reset it. So if you have a configuration file where you have like minimal settings so that your computer doesn't explode for running a ton of clients, it will reset it, and then you'll have new models, high textures, high resolution, and it's probably not going to be good for your computer if you don't have a powerhouse like me. And even with my powerhouse, I have a lot of struggles running this many clients. So this is how I do it. I actually launch them tanks first and then alphabetical order. So tanks come first, so I can I have Dave here on the left and the tanks here, and then everyone else is alphabetical. And the reason Dave is on this other thing, Dave has a different client. If you didn't notice, Dave has a different folder. So Dave's client has higher graphic settings and sound. The other client that I installed is identical, except there's no sound and the graphic settings are minimal. That way Dave can kind of drive and play the game and everyone else is, not taking up a lot of resources. You run 54 clients, you're probably going to need 64 gigabytes of RAM because I think each client takes up around 300 or 400 megabytes. 32 gigs would be too tight, especially if you're running your own server. So I highly recommend 64 gigs. You don't really need a powerful video card. I have a powerful video card. You don't need one. I would recommend a good processor, though, like an i9 of some sort. I don't really know my computer terms too well. I just know that I have an i9 of some sort. You probably don't need to overclock it or anything. Just I happen to have an Alienware, just throwing out a name there, but I don't think you need that. You can probably build something anywhere that has a 64 gigs of RAM and a decent processor. I guess lastly, a little off the topic of macros, when you are playing on your own server, I would highly recommend backing up your server every day that you play, just in case something goes wrong. It'd be terrible to lose it all, obviously. And yeah, that's about it for the macros. I went to as much detail as I thought was necessary. If you want more detail, more depth, I will. I can talk more. I can talk about the composition of the groups and why they're set up that way. If you've never ran a raid team, there is reasons to put certain characters in certain groups together. This is not a perfect composition, but it's as good as I could get it for 9 groups. So if you liked what you see, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll keep sending more raid videos, more theory videos, and yeah, if you have a request, let me know. Until then, have a good one.